Hey YouTubers, welcome back to Desert Have a Garden. I am in the kitchen today and I wanted to give you another recipe to use your sourdough starter. So this recipe is for sourdough energy bar cookies, and this hopefully utilizes a lot of ingredients that you have available in your pantry, and it makes a really delicious treat. And why use sourdough? Well, for one thing, if you're growing sourdough, you probably end up with a lot of sourdough and can't always bake enough bread to use it all up. But additionally, we know that sourdough helps pre-digest the grains and the wheat, and that makes it a lot more gentle on our stomachs. So especially if you have kids with sensitive tummies, or maybe you do, the pre-fermenting of the grains helps make it easier on your stomach. Now we ferment it before we add the sweeteners, so you're not going to have like some weird sour cookie. There isn't a sourdough flavor at all, because we first ferment the flour and the oats, and then we add all the sweeteners and other ingredients. So then you end up with a really tasty cookie. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and get started with the ingredients. First, we will need 1 cup of sourdough starter, and you can see that my bowl of starter is really full here. I'm getting ready for the farmer's market this weekend, and so I'm growing my starter quite big. For the farmer's market, I use about 30 cups of starter. Okay, so I'm going to mix down the starter a little bit. You can see it's nice and bubbly and elastic. It's very happy starter. And we'll go ahead and dig in there and take out 1 cup. A little bit more. There we go, 1 cup. And we will also mix it with 1 cup of fats. So I like to use a 1/2 cup of melted butter. So this is just 1 stick of butter, and I have it melted in my measuring cup. And then next I will add in the 1/2 cup of coconut oil in order to get 1 cup total. So my coconut oil stays melted at room temperature just because it's so warm here, and coconut oil melts right around 77 degrees, and my house is every bit that warm. I like to use this mixing attachment on my KitchenAid, and so mixing the starter and the fats together. Next, we will add in the flour and the oats. We need 2 cups of oats. And I like to use the old-fashioned oats because they don't get as soggy as the quick cook oats. And like most of my ingredients, I do get them from Azure Standard. I'll put the note down in the description below. And we also add 2 cups of whole wheat flour. And simply mix these together. You may need to scrape down once while you're mixing to make sure that starter gets incorporated with the flour and the oats. When everything's incorporated together, you will set it into a bowl in order to ferment for at least 6 hours. You can use whatever kind of bowl you'd like, as long as it is not stainless, because that does mess with the fermentation process. I'm using a plastic bowl here, and you get all the bits down in there. And I kind of press them down in together to make sure that they ferment all together. And it will be very dry and crumbly, so don't expect it to be wet. And this is how it looks here. We simply cover it with plastic wrap, and then you will allow it to ferment for 6 hours, and we'll come back and start adding the additional ingredients. Now that our dough has been souring for a little over 6 hours, we will begin adding the additional ingredients. So I place it back into our mixing bowl, and for this part, sometimes it's easier to just use your hand. There we go. Get all those extra oats. And there are many ingredients for this recipe, but feel free to look down below in the description and it will tell you what is needed, so that way you can have the whole recipe. I am going to start by adding 3 eggs. Then 3/4 cup brown sugar. 1/4 cup honey. A scant teaspoon of salt. 1/4 teaspoon of ground cloves. 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, but I am using 4-fold, so I only use 1/4 teaspoon. 1 teaspoon cinnamon, 1 teaspoon ginger, and 1 teaspoon baking powder. Now we mix this all together. Now that we have a batter, we add in 1½ teaspoons of baking soda. There's 1/2 teaspoon and 1 teaspoon baking soda. We mix this together again. Lastly, we add in walnuts and cranberries. 1 cup dried cranberries, 1 cup chopped walnuts, and a final mix. Now we are ready to place them on a cookie sheet. I like to use a parchment lined baking sheet, and using a cookie scooper, I place the cookies onto the sheet. Now I place the cookies in a preheated oven to 350 degrees and bake for approximately 10 minutes. You may want to start peeking in on them around 8 minutes. Repeat with additional batter until you have baked them all. Alright, so once these cookies are starting to look a little golden around the edges, they are ready to come out of the oven. Alright, our sourdough energy cookies are out of the oven, and you can see how delicious they look with the nuts and cranberries, and they're slightly spicy with the ginger and the cinnamon and the cloves. They're really good, and I have an eager taste tester here to try them. So these cookies are really simple to make with pantry staples, and I think they taste really good. They're easy on the stomach, and they're just really enjoyable. So I hope that you utilize your sourdough in this way and make some tasty cookies. If you liked this video, subscribe and give us a thumbs up.